Well, hello and welcome to Liturgy and Pentecostal Ministry. My name is Steve Spears, and I will be facilitating this course for the next 8 weeks. I'm glad you're here, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you all better, even though it's long distance. But through these classes, I've learned that I can get to know you a little bit better, and hopefully, you get to know me somewhat. But this course is designed to look at worship, specifically Pentecostal worship, and how that can be integrated into a more robust idea of Christian formation and mission. And so we'll be looking at two main texts in this course. First text is Dan Tumberland's Pentecostal Sacraments. This book was written several years ago, and it's actually in its second edition, which I hope you have. If you have the first edition, um, then you'll have to adjust your readings, and I'll help you do that. But you really should have received the second edition to Dan's book. And what Dan does in this is he explores Pentecostal sacraments through our connection to King Jesus, specifically the Lordship of Christ, and the fact that He is our Savior, He is our sanctifier, He is our Spirit baptizer, He is our healer, and He is our soon coming King. And so He takes those five areas in which we understand our relationship with God through Christ, and He associates them with sacraments that we participate in. Specifically for salvation, he explores the sacrament of baptism, our initiation into the church. For sanctification, he explores the sacrament of foot washing, which might be something new to you all, but traditionally Pentecostals have always been kind of engaged in this practice, and Dan talks about that in a very interesting way. As Spirit baptizer, we speak about being baptized in the Spirit and the sacrament of speaking in tongues, and Dan goes through that. As healer, this is something familiar to all of us. Jesus is our healer, and the sacrament for that is taking oil and anointing with oil and believing that that is some way efficacious in our faith, and kind of grabbing a hold of the healing virtue of Christ that is ours through his atoning work. And as soon coming King, he looks at the sacrament of communion, or the Lord's table, or what is theologically understood as the Eucharist, the table of thanks. And so he connects all five of these ideas of who Jesus is in our relationship to God with these sacraments. And so we will go through that book. Also, the second book that we're looking at is James Smith's book, You Are What You Love. Now, in James' book, what he does is he looks at worship as a way of formation, and he talks about how the worship liturgies, ancient and new, are designed to form us. They form us, and they form our desires. What's nice about Dan's book and integrating it in with James Smith's book is that the chapters really line up nicely, and you'll find out that they kind of complement one another as you go through them. And so, what I'm looking for in our discussion questions, in our engagement online, is some critical reflection. And what I mean by that is I'm looking for your engagement with the text, not necessarily what the text says, although there's a part to that, but how did that text make you feel? What thoughts came to mind in the questions? I'm not asking you to give us a quiz. Well, Dan says that the sacraments are this on page 3. What is the answer? No, the questions I'm asking you to present to your other students is, what questions came to mind when you were reading Dan's book, when you were reading Jamie's book? What questions perhaps did you want to ask the author? Those sort of things. And we'll talk more about those reflections in a moment. But there is another text that we'll be looking at, and it's a short article by Chris Green, The Altar and the Table. And this is just a brief article that I have permission to use by Dr. Chris Green. And I'm going to ask you to offer critical reflection on that through a paper. In fact, why don't we just look at uh, the assignments and what we're expecting as far as attendance with that. Um, First of all, each week you are required to come to the class through the portal here and to engage with your students and with me what you have read. And so that'll be your attendance. If you don't show up, you get a 0 for attendance, basically. And so what I am requiring is that each Wednesday, by Wednesday of each week, this week is a little different. I'm going to give you to the end of the week because some of you are just getting your books. But starting next week, on Wednesday, you will need to put in your first entry into the Populi portal for your discussion. Why I do that on Wednesday is because other students need to have time to put their posts in and engage you, and so you'll put that in there. If you wait till Friday to put in your first post, that's not very good because people won't have time to engage you. So put it in on Wednesday and then come back either Thursday or Friday and engage your fellow students. And when I say engage your fellow students, I'm talking about, talk about what they wrote. Ask them questions. I'm not asking you to say, "Hey, Joe, that was a really good post. I enjoyed reading that." That's not engagement. I want you to be specific. Oh, you made this point. I didn't see that. What do you think about this? And that sort of thing. It's a conversation. It's okay to disagree, although we're going to do that cordially here. We're not going to beat anybody up or be snarky in any way. But it's okay to disagree. But we do this as critical engagement so we can learn from one another. So that's part of your assignment. That's part of your attendance. But there's also 3 key assignments that I have, 3 written assignments. And the first one is actually due by the end of this week. And that's just simply a short introduction to who you are. Make it simple. Don't go and make this more difficult than it is. I simply want to get to know you, and the best way for me to do that is for you to just talk about yourself. Talk about where you are in your studies. I'd love to know that. Is this your first year? Or is this your 5th year? Where are you with your studies? When do you plan to graduate? What do you plan to do? And if there's any ministry context, maybe you're a pastor or a volunteer or a worship leader, whatever. I'd like to know that context. And of course, talk about your family, talk about your dog, whatever you want to do. Just introduce yourself. And that is due this coming Friday. The second assignment is the reflection on Chris Green. And you can see that when that is due. In fact, I might have it here, November 18th. You'll see that in the syllabus. So we'll have time to talk about that. I'm just looking for some engagement on that, a reflection paper on that. And so if you have questions that you can ask me. But your final paper, your final assignment is your big paper. And that is due the last Friday of the class. And I say that because I have to grade your papers. And I can't close the class out and give everybody a grade until I have all the assignments in it. So that paper is due at the last day of the class. And just let me talk about that just for a moment. This is, a pretty hefty paper, and I want you to engage one of the topics from the reading, whether it's from Dan or Jamie. Just engage one of the sacraments, engage one of the ideas, and give me a paper on that. And what I suggest, or actually would be very helpful for you, is to make sure you get my approval for that. You don't want to come in here and say, you know what, I'm going to write on discipleship from Bonhoeffer's book, and that just wouldn't cut it for this class. We're going to write on liturgies, we're going to write on worship, we're going to write on Christian formation. Now, I suggest that you do that right away and begin to write on your paper. If you start writing your paper the last week of class, you're not going to get it done because there is research, there are your ideas, you want to get them in place. I suggest you start your research tomorrow. Start you're looking for your ideas right now and give me the topic that you want to write on and get that thing going. Go ahead and write it. Don't put yourself under pressure. We're coming up on the holidays and you don't want to be under pressure, start writing that paper now. And by the time you're at the end of class, you're going to go, hey, that was pretty easy. Maybe give yourself to write a page a week. Or do some first preliminary research. And I'm be happy to guide you in that. I have resources, I have articles, I have books I can send you, and I will do that gladly if you will ask. But I don't know to do that unless you ask. That is, I want a cover sheet for all of these. Um, it doesn't count as part of it. It's just a cover sheet. And you'll see that on the syllabus page under the attachments. You'll see a place where it says a template for a cover sheet. I want your cover sheets to look exactly like that, except with the information that is pertinent to your assignment. And we don't want any of these fancy cover sheets, no, lacy borders or anything like that. Just exactly plain text, just like I have there in the syllabus page. And if you have any questions about that, let me know. I won't grade you on those in the first two papers, but in your final paper, you will be graded on your cover sheet. And so just be aware of that. Also, as far as articles and resources, many of you perhaps aren't near a library where you can get books. Some of you might not have access to that. However, all of you have access to what is called the ATLA database. And what I am going to do is I'm going to give you some extra credit. If you will go to the ATLA database and give me um, the citation, the Turabian citation. By the way, say Turabian with me. Turabian, right? Turabian. Turabian is your friend. Turabian is how you write. If you don't know what Turabian is, if you haven't taken a writing course, then you need to talk to me about Turabian because you will be graded on formatting your paper in the Turabian format. And so uh, part of that is your footnotes and your endnotes. And what do those look like? And so what I'm asking you to do is go to the ATLA database, and you'll see this in the assignments there, that there are two articles that I want you to look up and send me the, excuse me, send me the Turabian citation for that. The first article is Nourishment for a Journey, Pentecostal Via Salutis by Ken Archer. Look that up. What you do is you go in there and you do a search, you find the article, send me the citation. The second article is Thinking in Tongues by James Smith. Yes, Thinking in Tongues by James Smith. Look that article up and send me the citation. And so I'll give you some extra credit for that. And believe me, you are going to want extra credit because your papers are going to be graded heavily. I want to give everybody in the class an A. And here's how you do that. You show up to class every week. You fill out your reflections. You fill out, all your posts to the requirements of the course, and you turn in the three papers. The first two papers, they're a given. It's either fail or pass. You turn in your personal reflection. It's an A. You got an A. There's no grading that, although I will grade it and send it back to you. I'll grade it for grammar. I'll grade it for the cover sheet and send it back to you. But all you got to do is turn it in. You get an A. The second paper, same thing. It's pass fail. Turn it in, you get an A. Don't turn it in, you don't get an A. Okay? Third, you turn in your final paper on time. Most likely, you will probably get a low B, maybe a high B, some of you if you're writing, but I grade those heavily. I take off on every jot and tittle that you miss. Grammar, punctuation, citations. If it's not Turabian, it gets taken off. And so that paper is a heavy duty part of your grade. And most likely, you'll get a B. Maybe some of you might get a low A, um, but you're going to need extra credit to bring your grade up to an A. And so I want to do that. There's another way to get extra credit, and that is to go to a high church, that is a Roman Catholic, Anglican, Lutheran church, go to a service and simply write a reflection on that. And I'll give you 5 extra credit points. Some of you who are pastors might have to go to a midweek service or another service. Um, During COVID, I allowed people to do it online, but not anymore. And it's extra credit. You either do it or you don't. So the requirement is that you go to a high church service and you just write on what you observed. What made you feel uncomfortable? What made you feel comfortable? How did you see perhaps the working of the Spirit? Just reflection on that, and I'll give you 5 extra credit points. Okay, I've gone way over what I want to do normally each week. I'll probably give you a 10-minute kind of introduction to what we're reading. I will do some house cleaning, perhaps. Maybe there are some posts that aren't getting posted right, or maybe there was something that I need to address as far as the class. Um, and we'll talk about assignments. But I'll also give you a a resource. And this week, I just want to simply say that there is a resource, excuse me, that I want to give you that I believe would be just a wonderful book for your library. That's called Towards a Pentecostal Theology of Worship. This was compiled by Leroy Martin. He is the professor of Old Testament at Pentecostal Theological Seminary, and he's put together several articles from other uh, theologians, some of them with the seminary, some of them with other institutions, and it is a really good resource on Pentecostal worship. It's something that I go to all the time for my research, for preaching, just for sharing, and for talking about things just like this. And so you'll want to maybe look into this and get this in your library when you can. Okay, I've gone way over this week, but usually this will just be about a 10-minute deal. Again, welcome to class. If you have any questions, you have my email. Um, Send me those final paper suggestions, what you want to write on. Get on that. Get on that right away. Start writing that. Trust me, you don't want to write this the last week of school. You're going to be doing all kinds of other things with that. And so get on that. If you have any questions on any of the assignments, if you have questions on the extra credit, don't wait till it's over. You've got a deadline. Once we're past the deadline, no more extra credit. If you don't know what Turabian is, if you don't know what Atla is, these are your friends. Atla database. That's where you can get all of your articles for your paper. And we'll talk more about that um, and probably next week about where your resources can come from. I started talking about that not being by a library, but Atlas is where you can get your resources. And so we'll talk about that. Again, I'm way over. Thank you for joining us. I hope you have a great week. If you have any challenges at all, I don't have my books. I don't have this. Tell me. I don't know unless you tell me. And so I'm very lenient. I want you to be successful in this class. I want to give everybody an A, and I want you to learn. And so the best way to communicate any challenges you have is through the email. All right. God bless you. Look through the syllabus, look on the lesson page, and if you can't have, again, if you have any challenges accessing any of the resources, let me. Okay, I'm going to let you go. Bless you. Have a good day. Bye bye.